You wake up at 7:15 a.m., alarm blaring, and instead of getting up, you hit snooze 3 times. You tell yourself, I'll rest a bit more, I've earned it. An hour later, your plan for the day is already behind schedule, and the frustration begins to settle in quietly, but persistently. You shrug, blaming fatigue, workload, or the day itself. The truth is simpler. Comfort has become your addiction. It whispers permission to delay, to settle, to avoid what matters. And each small surrender chips away at the discipline you think you possess. This isn't about motivation or willpower. It's about identity. If you see yourself as someone who values growth, someone who takes responsibility, someone who acts decisively, then these small comforts are acts of betrayal against that self. Comfort has a seductive way of convincing you that delaying action is harmless, that avoiding tension is safe, but it isn't. It's quietly making you weak, not in moments, but in habit after habit, day after day. By the end of this video, you'll see the invisible patterns that let comfort dominate your choices. You'll understand the precise shifts that reconnect your actions with your intended identity. And you'll recognize that discipline isn't a daily struggle, it's a reflection of who you allow yourself to be. If you watch closely, the daily compromises you think are small will no longer escape your awareness. You'll know exactly what to adjust, and why ignoring it costs more than you realize. To break free from comfort, you need to see the internal patterns clearly. There are 3 shifts that determine whether you surrender to ease or act with discipline. First, recognize the self-licensing bias. Comfort convinces you that one small indulgence earns a pass for delay elsewhere. You think, I worked hard yesterday, I deserve a slow morning. That permission feels harmless, but it compounds. One delayed task leads to another, and before long, you're consistently avoiding pressure that should define your progress. Second, understand the emotional fatigue loop. Your mind constantly evaluates immediate feelings over long-term consequences. Choosing comfort provides short-term relief, but each concession weakens your resolve. Imagine sitting down with your laptop intending to draft a plan. The phone buzzes, the chair is soft, and suddenly scrolling social media feels essential. That small choice trains your brain to value comfort over commitment, subtly reshaping your identity without dramatic drama. Third, implement the micro-resistance mechanism. This is about creating tiny, consistent acts that oppose the pull of comfort. For example, before breakfast, make your bed perfectly, or take 5 minutes to stretch. These micro-resistances signal to your mind and body that your standards matter more than momentary ease. They anchor your sense of self to deliberate action rather than indulgence. Consider a real-life example. A friend working remotely decided to tackle the hardest task first every morning. Even when tempted to linger in a warm bed, he pushed himself into that first task. The effect was immediate. Days felt longer, energy focused, and the habit eventually reshaped his approach to work entirely. He no longer identified as someone who waits for motivation. He became someone who moves first, regardless of comfort. These 3 mechanisms, self-licensing awareness, emotional fatigue understanding, and micro-resistance, form the visible framework of disciplined living. By observing them, you gain clarity on why comfort dominates and where your power lies. Transition, the first pattern, self-licensing, is more than just rationalizing rest, it's a subtle identity trap. Every day, small indulgences whisper excuses. You've earned this break, skip this workout, scroll a little longer, delay that call. Each concession is minor, but it compounds. Over time, you're no longer the person who follows through, you are someone who negotiates with themselves endlessly. Picture a professional managing a home business. She tells herself she'll start client outreach after breakfast. Breakfast stretches into browsing social media for 30 minutes. She justifies it, I need to fuel up first. That micro-choice repeats across days, and eventually, she identifies as someone who intends but doesn't execute. Discipline is not about effort, it's about consistent identity alignment. As Rohn said, discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. By noticing self-licensing, you intercept this bridge before it collapses. Every small conscious refusal strengthens the bridge, every indulgence weakens it. Transition, Even when you know self-licensing is harmful, your brain fights for comfort through emotional fatigue. You feel tired after a long day. Your body and mind demand rest. But fatigue is neutral, it doesn't create weakness, yielding repeatedly to it does. Choosing comfort over action trains the brain to prioritize relief over achievement. Consider a man trying to improve his fitness. He tells himself he's exhausted and skips his evening workout. Each skipped session feels justified in the moment. Weeks later, he notices his energy dips, his confidence erodes, and he avoids not just workouts, but any challenging task. Comfort reshaped his identity without any dramatic failure. It was invisible until cumulative consequences appeared. Breaking this loop requires microaction. Stand up when your body resists. Start a small task when your mind signals fatigue. Each act of resistance rewires perception. You are someone who acts even when it's inconvenient. Your identity shifts before your results do, making consistency almost automatic. Transition. Now, micro-resistance isn't a dramatic overhaul. It's a daily, deliberate choice to oppose comfort. Every morning, make a small, deliberate decision that signals identity. Stretch before checking your phone. Take 5 minutes to organize your workspace, or write a quick plan for the day. These are tiny wins that compound. A grounded anecdote: a friend decided to read one page of a challenging book daily, even if he wanted to stay in bed. At first, it seemed trivial. Weeks later, he found himself finishing chapters, tackling larger tasks, and approaching work with consistent discipline. Micro-resistance doesn't feel heroic, it's invisible, but it redefines identity quietly, establishing a pattern of deliberate action. Transition: understanding patterns and practicing micro-resistance only matters if your identity is aligned. Your actions reinforce your identity. Surrender to comfort repeatedly, and you become weak. Resist comfort consistently, and you become disciplined. Consider financial decisions. Avoiding small unnecessary purchases daily compounds into significant savings. Health routines, social boundaries, and work habits all follow the same principle. Small, consistent choices create long-term compounding effects. Discipline, then, is a quiet affirmation of who you choose to be, not a daily struggle. Comfort is the enemy because it shifts identity silently. Recognize it, oppose it with deliberate micro-resistance, and the results compound in ways you cannot ignore. By now, the pattern should be clear. Comfort doesn't just slow you down, it redefines who you are. Every indulgence, every moment of avoiding tension, gradually signals to your mind that delay and ease are acceptable. Your identity shifts quietly, almost imperceptibly, and before you realize it, the person you thought you were, the one who follows through, the one who values growth, is replaced by someone more passive, more reactive, more surrendered to comfort. Discipline is not about forcing effort, it is the reflection of an aligned identity. When you consistently act in opposition to comfort, when you choose deliberate micro-resistance, you are sending signals to yourself that matter more than any motivational speech. These small, repeated actions compound over time. Just as financial discipline turns pennies into thousands over months, small consistent acts against comfort accumulate into lasting strength, resilience, and reliability. Responsibility and self-respect are inseparable in this process. Choosing comfort at the cost of your commitments erodes both. You don't just fall behind in tasks, you erode the inner standard you hold for yourself. Each small act of resistance reinforces the internal expectation that you are someone who honors your word, who values your own potential, who refuses to be a passive participant in your own life. The quiet clarity of this framework is that you do not need a dramatic transformation to reclaim discipline. You need awareness, deliberate opposition to small comforts, and patience with the compounding effect of consistent action. Your identity does not reform in a moment. It reforms in the accumulation of choices, in the visible framework of daily decisions that prioritize standards over ease. Ultimately, every instance where comfort tempts you is an invitation to practice identity-aligned action. The small wins, the 5-minute resistances, the avoided distractions, the tasks completed despite fatigue, are the true markers of strength. They are proof not of effort, but of integrity, and over time, they redefine you into the person capable of consistent, sustainable discipline. Comfort will always be present. It will whisper, it will lure, it will insist that surrender is acceptable. But the person who consistently acts despite it, who practices micro-resistance, who recognizes self-licensing and refuses it, is no longer negotiable with themselves. That person is someone whose identity is anchored in deliberate action, not momentary ease. Discipline is no longer a struggle, it is a reflection. It is visible in the choices made before fatigue convinces you otherwise, in the small resistances that accumulate into habits, in the silent, steady assertion of standards over indulgence. Each decision compounds, quietly reshaping your capabilities, your results, and the person you become. There is no sudden climax, no dramatic revelation. There is only the inevitable consequence of repeated alignment, a life defined not by excuses, but by the steady practice of identity. Your actions, once aligned with who you intend to be, create an unshakable certainty. Comfort may call, but it no longer defines the terms. You act because that is who you are.